Our first speaker is Tony Comerford. A speech entitled Going Public. A speech entitled Going Public. Please welcome Tony Comerford.
Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and supportive guests. Public toilets are like politicians. We hate them, but we have to have them. You remember those stinking old smelly toilets where you held your breath until your face turned purple, and where you wouldn't dream of sitting on a toilet seat for fear some mysterious growth might later start to sprout from behind. So imagine our delight when the first self-cleaning musical public toilet was invented a number of years ago. There you could relax, safe in the knowledge that while you drained the system, it was done to the highest possible standards of hygiene. And if you have a little difficulty going, well, the laxative melodies of the chamber orchestra would no doubt help you on your way. And then the way the toilet used to clean itself, the toilet bowl elevating and flushing itself, followed by steaming jets of hot water shooting out in all directions from the walls and the ceiling, and then hot air bellowing up from underneath the floor, drying out the whole cubicle, leaving it lovely and pristine for the next customer. Now I can see by the expressions on some of your faces you're wondering, how does he know what goes on inside a self-cleaning toilet? Well, I'll tell you how I know. Last summer, my wife and I went on a holiday to the south of France, and while we were there, we took a bus trip into Saint-Tropez, where all the rich and famous hang out. And I said to my wife, if we're going to be hanging around for the day with Mick Jagger and Rod Stewart, then I'm dressing up for the occasion. So on went the Tommy Hilfiger trousers, the Ralph Lauren polo shirt, and the handmade Italian shoes. Now when you're walking around Saint-Tropez in 40 degrees, you tend to drink an awful lot of water. And sometimes you can be caught off guard, as was the case with my wife and I. All of a sudden, there we were, both of us, bursting. However, just in time, we spotted a public toilet down the street and made a dash for it. A hard thing to do when your knees are pressed tightly together. And guess what? It was one of those self-cleaning toilets. Nothing but the best for Mick and Rodney. Now we had a wee argument over who'd go in first. But seeing as my wife was in possession of the only 50-cent piece we had, I lost the argument and she went in first. Now when your bladder is about to explode and you're standing around waiting, a minute is a long time. So when my wife came out of the toilet, I shouted to her, no, don't close the door. I haven't time to wait for it to clean itself. There must be a sensor in there that knows when it's occupied. But just in case, I said, put your fingers in the door to stop it from closing fully. So I dashed in, whipped my trousers down on my ankles, sat down on the seat and went, ah. And that's when I heard it. The distinct clunk of the door closing. Now my wife swore afterwards that her fingers had just slipped out. But I had my suspicions. I immediately reached out and grabbed the handle of the door, but it wouldn't budge, not until it was fed another 50 blooming cents from outside. All of a sudden, the toilet bowl started to elevate and flush itself. I jumped off the seat and stood there with my trousers around my ankles, searching for an emergency button. But before I could locate it, I was assaulted by steaming jets of hot water, shooting out in all directions from the walls and the ceiling. Until finally I stood there saturated from head to toe, but clean as a new whistle. Then hot air started bellowing up from underneath the floor, and I thought, hold on, all is not lost. It's going to dry me off as well. So as I stood there with my arms outstretched, my eyes closed and my trousers down around my ankles, hot whirled all around me, and I could feel I was starting to dry out. Totally relaxed, I was suddenly startled by this unmerciful scream. I opened my eyes, only to find myself staring at this woman, who was not my wife, and who continued to scream abuse at me. It seems that while my wife had gone off looking for change, this woman happened along and fed the door another 50 shillings. As she turned and ran, she screamed at me again. Only this time, I screamed back at her, "No, no, don't close!"